But the first question is just how far away from starvation are the people on Maui if off island food supply was halted?
I would say, so the general population, I'm not going to say the Hawaiians because we're hunting, fishing, diving, subsistence is a way of life here. But for the folks that have moved here from other places that don't really know how to live off the land, then I would say probably 2 weeks away from starvation at any time due to the lack of food infrastructure. Our food infrastructure was badly abused by missionaries and giant agricultural corporations, the big five, way back in the day. And then that simply got turned over to tourism now. So then where there were those agricultural fields and stuff, there's not really water for them because the hotels are using the bulk of the water. That's one part of it. There's a lot. It's pretty complicated, but yeah, we need to farm a lot more here, and we need to pay attention to our natural resources so that we can teach people how to make sure that we're food secure by sort of taking care of the land and growing food around us and taking care of the environment.
Um, I know that's a major part of your initiative, and you say that a lot of the Hawaiians wouldn't necessarily be limited to that 2 week mark, but how many of the locals actually implement a lot of the things that you're talking about?
I'll say for most of the Kanaka Maoli that I know, the actual Hawaiians, all of them, somebody in the family is fishing or hunting or throw net. And while it's easy to go to the store, I think that most of the people in the local community find that the poorer we are, the richer we are
Hmm.
in some ways. And I don't say that. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean on the bigger picture, but like when you're eating lobster and you're eating fish and you're eating Samoan crab and coconut and mangoes versus eating rice and spam. Sometimes that's just convenient. So I think a lot of people lean on that within society because we get drug into that. So yeah, a huge part of even our local community would fall into that starvation mode as well, because a lot of that knowledge has fallen to the wayside. And it's probably a lot less of even the local folks that, especially on Oahu and on some of the other islands where it's really been, I don't know what the word is, it urbanized or whatever, then I think that, yeah, all the islands sit in that same plight. There's not a giant amount of agriculture here that actually stays here rather than getting exported or gets turned into, I don't know, hotel stuff.
Gotcha. Interesting. Um, Before we get into the wildlife relief work, what is regenerative education centers and what was the inspiration to develop it?
So, regenerative education centers is to sort of educate people to what a regenerative lifestyle looks like. We've heard about sustainable, we've heard about not sustainable, organic, this, that, right? So, I think we're at the point and stage in life right now around us within agriculture, within business, within so many different areas that we need to do more than just sustain it. We need to fix it, we need to repair it, we need to figure out what went wrong, how can we move forward, like walking with nature and technology, working for each other instead of against each other. I think there's something to be said for that. So 100,000 coffee cups a day, just like on a small island like Maui. Bring your own coffee cup when you come here. Thinking about what you put down the laundry and where's that come out? Are all those microplastics coming out of your clothes and going into the water table and into the environment? They are. So like just paying attention a little bit more. So we're teaching people to observe what's around them so they can make good decisions. Because people want to make good decisions, but we're sometimes it falls to the wayside and we're not real observant of it. So I figured out years ago how to get some beetle larvae actually consuming styrofoam. I think Surfer Magazine did an article on that in 2018 about how I was taking the old surfboards and actually feeding them to these beetle larvae. Then I was treating them with some earthworms and some mycelium, and I was actually coming full circle with a product that I could grow flax grass, which we could actually reglass surfboards with ones that had been chewed up by these beetle larvae. So there was something to be said there, like taking something and bringing it full circle. Out of that,
Fascinating.
yes. Can I answer this real fast?
Yeah, please.
Okay, cool. Are you still there?
I'm still here.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah. So
Don't worry
where were
about
we
it.
at?
You were talking about the surfboard,
Oh, the worms that eat styrofoam.
flax grass. Yeah.
Yeah, like we'll growing different trying to look like to a more sustainable future with surfboards and like polystyrene and styrofoam products will stay on the planet forever. How can we start to upcycle some of those things perhaps into houses or like actually bioremediate them right back into the circle of life somehow for the future, thousands of years for the future? What's going to be left behind between how we entertain ourselves? So if we can find more sustainable products in that industry, we don't see much of it. You see some people taking some steps to make that happen. So when that happened, I decided to I was trying to put that out to the community, and then I didn't want the enthusiasm getting ahead of the facts. All of a sudden, I had a lot of people telling me, "Oh, my surfboard factory, I got mealworms in the back eating it now." And I'm trying to tell them, "No, if you don't do that right, you're just going to make a bunch of smaller pieces of styrofoam." So let's everybody get on the same page and realize it's a bigger, broader process than that. And so I started a nonprofit to just sort of educate people about that. And then I've been farming most of my life and teaching people about regenerative agriculture. And that's how I learned about those worms eating styrofoam. It was an accident. I had found them in some oatmeal and they ate through a styrofoam container. And then I put them in with some styrofoam boards and they ate them. But it was all about composting. So I've been teaching people about regenerative agriculture, trying to pay attention to where things go in my environment. And then that's sort of what led into starting regenerative education centers. So on the ground, we make models, demonstrations that serve almost like as an ecology center, if you will, where people can come and see what's happening and get their hands in the dirt. And then also making films to put out there to folks in other parts of the world to inspire them to perhaps take on some of these regenerative strategies. So that's what Regenerative Education Centers is born out of. Sorry, such a long-winded answer, but
Long-winded is perfect for the podcast, actually.
okay.
Is it just one location on Maui?
So I have 3 different farms on Maui. One of them recently has just went through the fire and the hurricane that destroyed it. We are going to rebuild there. We run a project there. It's called the Sea Trees Project. We work with a company, Sustainable Surf, and we plant native plants and plants that actually will stop erosion from putting silt out onto the reefs. So we were doing that there already. We were educating our community. We're building an ecology center there right on the ocean to show people that everything we do on land is actually what affects what happens in the ocean. So by planting natives, getting rid of invasive plants and whatnot, we're able to show those working models and perhaps inspire people to do that on their own land surrounding us so that we have healthier reef ecosystems around us. That's a huge part of that program. Yeah, I forgot what got me on that. Sorry, excuse me.
I was asking about locations on Maui.
Oh yeah, location. So that's to the south of us, right adjacent to Lahaina. Ironically enough, because we've been removing invasive grasses and invasive trees, the fire stopped at our farm. It burned our farm, but it smoldered it and it stopped it from spreading down the coast. You can see it on the satellite pictures. And we can't stress how important management is. Management of invasive species, management of natives. Trying to keep healthy ecosystems takes stewardship. You really have to have hands-on. And that's what my farms are about, setting up working models, feeding people. I really like to give food away and show that we grew this food by taking care of the Aina, by actually making it a healthier place instead of all these models we see everywhere around us. If it's growing grapes, if it's growing corn or canola, these giant fields of monocropping with straight lines. When it rains, all the silt, fertilizers, whatever, runs into either the waterways or into the ocean. We need to start thinking agriculture in a different way and looking and realizing it's our great grandchildren's land. And we need to make decisions that have less displacement, more, production, and for not only for us, but the species around us.
I'm curious about you personally. I'd love to hear about what your educational background is, but even before that, like when did you first develop an interest in environmentalism and Do you even remember a first cause that you really felt this passionate about?
Yeah, I think as a child, seeing all the aunties around me that were already farming, and seeing people that like held nature in reverence and seeing clean streams around, you kind of expect to see that everywhere in the world. And then when you travel, you're like, oh, whoa, it's not so clean. We thought these places were going to have pristine cleans we could still drink out, pristine streams we could still drink out of, like we can here in a lot of places in Hawaii. But so you see, wow, these people are older and what are they doing? Oh, they got their hands in the dirt. They must be doing something right. So I remember at a very young age just thinking and seeing folks with their hands in the dirt and thinking, wow, that's something good to do. Let's take care of it. I've been growing things since I was a kid. It just seemed right. Um, didn't really go to school too much. Just spent most of my life surfing, kite surfing, gardening, feeding people, and just coming living a really simple life. But that led to like many years later, learning from nature. So I like to say I'm educated by nature. I've been trying to plagiarize in the forest for a long time, and always living within a few hundred yards of the ocean my entire life, and being able to live off grid and have that relationship to nature. I've been pretty lucky that way. So
And then professionally, did you say that the regenerative educational centers are a nonprofit?
yes, they are a nonprofit.
So what did you do professionally prior to that?
Professionally, I've worn a bunch of different little hats and none. I've never actually really had a real job, so to speak of.
Okay.
I've been farming for the most part. I've done everything from bee removal to teaching people about bioremediation and just being self-educated, but really facing criticism from the universities, having not gone to school and trying to think out of the box. I've made it a point to cross my T's and dot my I's and not let the enthusiasm get ahead of the facts, so that if I'm going to say something, you can bet I've done my research on it. And I've tried to set up models constantly where I failed and learned from it. So most of my education has come from experience, and that's how what I try to pay forward is just the experience I've had,
Yeah.
and teach others from that.
Do you know how many families were displaced by the wildfires?
They say about 11,000 people, 22 homes. My number that I've gotten from around locally is more closer to about 14,000 displaced.
Wow.
And it's hard to tell what is families, direct families. Do you put that by three on an average? It's hard to say. Some of those houses were multi-generational, and there were 12 and 13, 14 people in a house. And so there was family, but in-laws and whatnot. What defines a family? Is it the unit family, or is it in-laws? The culture is a little different here. So everybody lives with everybody to a certain extent as well. So it's hard to give you a number on that, but I would say probably close to about 14,000 people displaced.
And we will talk about your Maui wildlife recovery program and what that entails. But aside from that, what solutions have been provided, and by whom, in terms of the government, or what are they doing?
Oh, I'd have to say, man, it's pretty sad when it comes to we've been pretty failed by the government. We've been pretty failed by big, giant nonprofits, and I want to point that out. A lot of people are putting money into Red Cross. People are putting money into FEMA, and I might probably get backlash from what I'm saying, but I'm going to tell you straight up. I watched it close, and I never knew the word disaster capitalism.
Mm.
I just learned that here on this journey. I've been approached by hundreds of different folks, and we learned we have to vet people. And we vetted, and I'd say 1 out of 10 turned out to be any kind of even truth in what they're doing. Out of the woodworks, all these nonprofits show up, and they follow disaster, and they follow different disasters around the world. Red Cross is just a larger one of those. And so what happened is, like, we're going to give you all of our old food that's already outdated in 3 weeks. So they empty all their warehouses from everywhere of all their old food, spend millions of dollars shipping it to Hawaii and taking all the money and putting brand new food in their warehouses. They're getting paid $40, $50 a meal, but they're giving $2 meals out and old food. We're already collecting in our storehouses outdated food that's being shipped from everywhere that's been donated.
Mm.
So all the money that was actually brought that should have gone to Hawaii and the people are going to these larger things that are, yeah, maybe they're helping the world in the way that they're doing it, but it's filling their coffers and it's not actually coming on the ground where it's needed. We saw a lot of old food, diapers, and tampons in the first few months, millions of dollars, and many companies making meals for 11,000 people a day, and half those meals being eaten up by people who weren't even part of the disaster, and then charging, getting paid big money for those meals, but giving these tiny $3 meals out. So there's a lot of hypocrisies we've seen around us, and I want to say, the government, out of the 14,000 people displaced in Lahaina, all of them signed the petition to not have the tourists come back to the west side, to have them give us till January, go to the other parts of the island, give us a break, let everybody kind of heal through the holidays and try to rebuild and get their feet on the ground. And they weren't listened to, and they just opened it for the hotels. And now people are being displaced, kicked out of the hotels. They're trying to find housing and Airbnbs, and the government's helping house a certain amount of them, but they're not taking into account how many people are falling through the cracks. All the people whose aunties are from Micronesia or Tonga or don't have papers. Thousands and thousands of people are falling through the cracks. So I want to say we feel like there's a giant disconnect, and we feel completely let down in so many ways by state and federal government, and a lot of, like I said, these predatory, almost in my eyes, nonprofits and organizations that are actually gaining wealth off this disaster.
Wild. In response, you developed the Maui Wildlife Recovery Program. What was that plan?
Not a wildlife recovery program. I want to point that out. I think that's on the thing there somewhere. And we also want to point out it's not a Maui wildfire recovery program either. It's a Maui fire recovery program. And language is important sometimes, because this was not a wildfire. This was something that was caused by the electric company. This was something that was caused by bad land management through several companies that don't take care of it. This was caused by the lack of awareness, and I say real gently, by even folks who lived in the neighborhoods and had too much stuff piled up. Not saying it's their fault in any way, but the powers around should know better and know that we go through these horrendous winds at certain times of the year, and that we need to pay attention to that. So, like, it's a larger picture, what's going on with it. Sorry, excuse me, I kind of got off track there a little bit. But.
No, that's perfect, actually. So Maui Fire Recovery Program is the appropriate name.
Yeah, I think so, because we want to point out these aren't wildfires. These are through bad management, negligence, all these other things that have caused this. And I think that's important language if people are going to get any kind of long-term recovery from the government and or whatever, and how things are dealt with.
Perfect. So what was your plan? What is the program?
So the program is set up since we were on the other farm and it got burned, and we were already living off grid and teaching folks how to get closer to the land, and that if they were going to live on ag land, they could have a mobile trailer and a mobile bathroom with a black water tank and a gray water tank and a solar system and satellite. And tragedies like this don't affect you as much because you don't affect, like, if people want to get back on their land and there's no sewage system or there's no electricity, it's going to make it harder for them to get back on their land or to set somewhere temporary. But if we can show that people can live that way, not make such a giant impact on the land, and that they're not taxing municipal systems, then they have a chance of actually being able to get back on their land and stay around and not get displaced. Because if they're going to find housing, it's going to be all in other parts of the island and far away. And most of the people lived on that hill conglomerated like that because that's where they wanted to be. So in order for people to be able to get back on that land, they have to be somewhere nearby. And I think that having some solid temporary houses for all the people that are going to get kicked out of the hotels, I realized that I had the power to bring in some resources through what we do with regenerative agriculture. And so I was able to bring in enough for possibly several hundred houses and to give them away free to folks. So
Unbelievable.
that they can get some stable sense of living, being able to, whether it's raking leaves or letting the kids play on the porch. It's really disconcerting for people in the hotels, not knowing if they're going to be there next week
Hmm.
or how it's going to go. You can't cook, you can't have friends over. So it's almost like prison for a lot of folks. You're not allowed to use the pools at the hotels, but yet you have to look at tourists coming over and suntan lotion all around you on the pool right next door. So there's a lot of like weirdness happening with it, and people need some source of some sort of stability. And so we figured we may not be able to help 14,000 people, but there's going to be a little bit of people that fall through the gaps. And a lot of the Hawaiians I know, and a lot of the, the local folks that aren't going to want to be in a hotel, we've already have a lot of folks on our list that we're helping as of right now. So I think we made a good choice trying to shift to the long run. Like, how can we house some of our neighbors? How can we make sure there's food for everybody? And also maybe use this as a wake up call that we need to live a little closer to nature. And
Yeah.
that's
So the plan is tiny homesteads, and language matters. So not tiny houses, but tiny homesteads. And can you explain what that build looks like? What does a
yeah. So
homestead
let's
look like?
talk for a family of 6 people, maybe even 8 people with a couple kids in there, how they were living up on Lahaina. Now, there's a 20-foot container, a 20-foot container, and another 20-foot container. And in between it is a really nice roof and a deck. And outside in Hawaii, we live outside a lot, like outside decks and porches. And we put couches out there and we make it nice. And then there's usually an outside kitchen. And that's kind of the way we live anyway. And the containers are bedrooms with air conditioning and a solar system that runs it all. And the outside lanai porch area is kind of where everybody hangs out at. And then there's a bathroom with a shower and a toilet completely separated, really nice on a trailer that pulls right up to the deck. That makes it legal. And then there's also a kitchen that pulls up on another trailer, and that makes it so you have a gray water system. So there's a full kitchen, stove, sink, everything. And now we're allowed to pull up wherever, and the municipal system can just come and pump the tanks. So there's nothing we have to worry about with the health department. And I think it gives people a sense of, all right, now you can live no matter where we put you for a couple of years, whether it's in someone's yard, whether it's in a county park, wherever it is, it will leave no signature because it rolled up on a trailer. And when it's time to go, it rolls right off and then can get put on their own land. And even if they're not living on it on their own land, perhaps something else has happened. Hopefully they could be, but then they have a bathroom and a kitchen if they want to camp, and they have storage while they're building the house. They can put all the lumber in these things. So there's like so many arguments that I think that validates using containers, because they're super strong, they're structurally sound, along with earth anchors. They actually are far even stronger than code here. There's a lot of discussion around the county. Oh, we don't want to see containers. We don't want to see a trailer park. Good. Then don't put concrete slabs down for temporary housing, because it's going to change the landscape in so many ways. Let's look at these things as a 2-year interim housing, and get people in these places that are hurricane proof, because they're steel containers that can be locked up if they need to leave and go somewhere, and that everything is contained. And perhaps we can really make a difference, whether it's 200 people or 2,000 people that are in need of these. If we prove the model out, which I feel like we are doing right now on site, and we have folks being housed in them already, then perhaps it'll get enough momentum where the powers that be will recognize that. And it looks like it's actually moving that direction, with some of our community boards and whatnot, to actually be able to house several hundred, if not thousands of people in little situations in temporary housing.
Amazing. How many shipping containers have you acquired, and how did you get those? Who funded it?
So Pasha has been amazing. They're a shipping company, and they put forth 50 45-foot cube containers They've also made 20-foot containers available for us to buy at a really super discounted price. And so with some of the money we raised, we bought 40 20-foot containers. We took the 50-foot containers, which are in transit every day. We're getting some. And then we build each one of those 40-foot containers into 3 bedrooms. And that makes so the 40-foot containers sit on the deck. And just one of those in itself will house 6 people with this deck scenario similar to the 20-foot containers. So it'll allow us to house 150 people out of the 40-foot containers and another 80 to 120 people out of the 20-foot containers. So that puts us over 300 folks that we can put in a comfortable, solid situation just out of what Pesha has done for us. So amazing. The community foundation stepped up and gave us a little bit of grant money. I think they gave us $100,000, which we can negotiate some of that with. And then we've done our own fundraisers and folks that I've reached out for. We've had another folks deliver 250 brand new air conditioner units. We have tile and lumber that's been donated. So most of our donations have been in kind. And now we're also letting folks know that they can go to the 501c3 and to put money in it for the future for all the builds out, buying the solar systems. We've got deals in place to buy complete solar systems for each homestead at an unbelievable price. I think $10,000, we can get a complete 10 kilowatt system. That 10 kilowatt system with panels and everything will go given to each one of these homesteads. And that's normally a cost of, I think, $30,000 to $40,000 for a 10 kilowatt system. So making these deals with these companies and being able to match some of these funds and having folks sponsor families and say, yeah, I want to get one of those solar systems that's going to take care of this family. This family owns it later. And now it also runs their house when they're back in Lahaina 3 years, 4 years down the road. So I think these are things that work for the long term, trying to really help people get a grasp on what sustainability looks like and kind of to change their habits. And it's going to teach these folks over this transition period of, rather than using 20 kilowatts a person a day, which I think is like the average, that you can get by for less than 1 kilowatt a day for 5 people if you just learn a few things. Watch it, you know. So I think there's going to be a lot of lessons to be learned from this.
Yeah. Who's doing all the manual labor?
So the manual labor is teams of volunteers. Some folks that were displaced from the fire that we're hiring, and we're paying some folks out of the money we've raised. Myself, other friends, which will put into the volunteer category. Yeah, kind of that's how it's working.
So
between
if people want,
volunteers, people we pay for, and ourselves.
but there is a need for volunteers.
There is a need for volunteers. And we're trying to tell people, we've had a lot of people reaching that want to come visit here and volunteer. Now, say you're a construction crew and we could house you on site, and you're not going into Lahaina and trying to play the hotel game, and you really want to come give a couple weeks, then we'll style you out. You can come stay with us, help us out, help us bang a couple out, but just stay away from Lahaina for a little while. Give everybody their space. Go to the other parts of the island, do what you got to do. If we could get people with like that mindset and understanding and going, hey, yeah, there is ways to help, we would probably be open to bringing even outside volunteers that way, that are coming in with that kind of savvy, because we can move mountains that way. Right now we have the construction where we've set everything up with jigs, which like makes it so it's already, you can build by Legos, and just about any volunteers we bring in, we can have build them out pretty easy, build walls, floors, and then they all just get put together. So working on that process makes it work. So yeah, we are running a volunteer program mostly locally, but then again, also if people are going to be on island and there's ways that they can volunteer, but also we don't want to be hypocritical and like support and say have people volunteering that are staying at Kaanapali, that are staying right there in the middle of the families and stuff, because they're not helping. And they may justify that they're coming and spending a few hours helping volunteer on the site. That doesn't really work. The weekend warrior that wants to spend it in between dinner and fishing and parasailing, That's not the guys we want. Guys who really want to come and spend a week or two on the ground and we'll house you and show you aloha. Those are the guys we could use. You know what I mean? Just so you know that. I want to differentiate that.
Yeah, of course. Um, where is all this work being done, and is it land that you guys own? And what was the
So
land being used for
I
prior?
lease land and I also own land. But everything is set up on one of the pieces of land that we lease. This piece of land is destined to just be an example of what the Polynesian voyaging plants were. It's right up front and center, right across from the Olowalu surf spot, where stones throw away. And so this land, there was supposed to be an example set here that agriculture should look like ulu and coconut and cane and tea leaf and all the things that are Hawaiian, not just straight rows of lemon trees and monoculture and that sort of stuff. So setting an example here right on the side of the road at Olowalu, that's where we're set up on site. And we'll build here for the next 3 years, 2 years. We'll have a food truck where we'll feed everybody from the farm. All of the victims from the fire get food for the next 2 years for free from the farm.
Wow.
And they can come here and sign up for their tiny house. A lot of the victims are also helping to build their own houses. We have a tool library that we're setting up. So we're bringing in every tool that there is and 10 of each one. So now as people in Lahaina rebuild, they'll be able to come to the farm, get their tools, use them for a week, bring them back, let someone else use them. So we'll have all these resources, classes, plants for people to replant their yards. And instead of replanting their yards with all these terrible landscapes plants that burn down, what about replanting them with native plants and food plants and plants that actually nurture our ecosystem here in the reef system? So we plan on playing a part in our community that way as well. So we are set up sort of as a hub. You can come get food here. You can come see what's happening. You can come play a part and volunteer. You can also come get your house here. You were displaced in the fire and you want to stay in Lahaina, you come here, you sign up, and we give you a free house, free homestead, houses,
Amazing.
deck, everything that you need. And that's what it's about.
How can you afford to transition your business from supporting kind of the tourist economy to what you're doing now and supplying the local economy for free?
I can't.
Okay.
But and my answer to that is there's two ways to wealth: acquire more or desire less. And for us in Hawaii to have the ocean in front of us and the mountain behind us, we have wild pig, we have wild deer, we have fish and lobster. We live like kings close to the land. We eat the best vegetables in the world. So we don't really need money. So for me to be able to serve my community right now and to played a part to bring in this big resource and be able to give it back to my community on the ground where I know everyone and I know exactly where it's going is an honor for me. And I'm glad that I'm able to do it. And so I personally, people ask me, Eddy, well, what about your tours? You were making, $13,000 a month doing your tours at your farm. What are you going to do about that? It's all right. You know what I mean? It's like USDA helped us with our mortgage a little bit. We've lost our farm stand and our whole income. So we don't have an income anyway right now. So it's like, what are we going to do? We're going to work and move forward doing what we're doing, and feed people and play a part in this. And yeah, we're just going to live with less for a little while. And as our community builds up to have more, I'm sure with the role we're playing in our community, we'll have more as well. Because we'll have been able to instill some of the ideals and beliefs of living closer to the land and helping to protect the reef around us. And I think that will rub off to the world because we're such a big destination. People always want to come here. So I think we're a powerful player. And when folks see here, and maybe if they come and actually see it done right, then we can, yeah. So I think that's the transition, is much more wealth out of what we can do for our community than we would be bringing in with the money that we received from running our operations. If that makes any sense.
Makes a lot of sense, but it's impressive how quickly you were able to adapt into the programs that you've developed and transition your entire lifestyle and business and everything.
As farmers, we're not always super profitable. And so much of what we do is like a nonprofit anyway. And I saw all these nonprofits with folks getting these giant salaries and not much money coming in. I'm going, wow, 20, 30% of 40, 50% of the nonprofit is their salaries. And I was thought, wow, that doesn't serve people. So let's make one aspect of our business, is we don't make profit on it anyway. Let's really make it a real nonprofit with a less than $20,000 a year salary. Let's make sure
Wow.
our employees make more than we do. Let's make sure that 100% of what comes into our programs goes towards our programs. We cover all the administrative fees. So I think we're named in Forbes magazine as one of the #1 small nonprofits to give to on the ground, because you know exactly where it's going to go. We're going to give it right back to our community, and it's happening right now. You can find us like on our Instagram page. You can keep track of what's happening, or you can go onto the website. And I think folks see what's happening. You reach out if you're going to come to Maui. Try to see what's happening here. You can get a feel for what's going on with the local community and how we're affected by it, and how you can come here with the right sense of mind. Go surfing, go have fun, go support the community, but also like support the community in the way of like being sensitive to it as well.
Right. Yeah, I love the idea of the homesteads being able to be moved from place to place, and also when people have access to their land in Lahaina once again, that potentially they could move the homestead there while they look to rebuild. But I'm curious if you have any insights about the practicality for an average Lahaina family to actually rebuild on their original land. Presumably, the only way they'd be able to afford it is through fire insurance. Are most families covered by insurance in this scenario?
So it's pretty trippy. Out of the 2,000 houses that were burned, I think only 250 of them are local families that own them.
Oh, wow.
The big plight here is all the local families that have been renting their whole lives and lived as second class citizens. And out of those 250 homes, if there was 13 people on a Hawaiian on a piece of land, those 250 homes actually represent like 4,000 people or 5,000 people or 12, whatever it is. It's actually a really big number. And so even just getting those 250 homes, some of them have insurance. I would say probably 2/3 of them don't, because they paid it off and they didn't want to have to pay that giant insurance price for it. So
Yeah.
a lot of them don't. But that's another reason why tiny homesteads are going to be super important. I know several folks, and a lot of these are going to folks that don't have insurance. And they're like, Eddy, how do I get back on my land? I'm like, we're getting you there. There's a 40-foot container. Here's your bathroom. Here's your kitchen. Here's your solar. Let's just do this. And that's how we're doing it. We're doing it
Gotcha.
somewhat sovereign and just putting people on their own land that way that don't have insurance to get back on their own land. I think that's super important, and it's something that needs to be looked at. How do we do this? You know what I mean? People are going to need some serious help. A lot of people don't have insurance. People are going to be displaced. A lot of people got insurance for their land, but it's going to be 3 years before they can build. They no longer have a job. They're going to live off their insurance money, which is just terrible. And they're going to like not be able to buy the house again. And they went from homeowner to displaced, and someone else will buy that land. There's
Right.
also things going on with the Corps of Engineers where they may force people to take their foundations out, which is ludicrous, because that'll mean that people will never be able to afford putting a new foundation in as well. The insurance only covered the house. So there's lots of gray areas and weird things happening. So I wish I knew more of the future of how it's going to look. So I think for us, we can just focus on getting people some immediate answer.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm thinking anti-shard. I'm thinking wherever we can do it, and whatever deals we can make with people to put these on their land without a signature until these things can get worked out. But yeah, it's complicated.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, it's so much of it is unknown still. Do you know if there's any health concerns about rebuilding on a burn site?
So there has been a variety of toxins that have been disclosed. Some of them from electric lines, some of them from asbestos, some of them heavy metals. So what the county's approach has been is to spray this stuff called soil tech on everything. I actually look at the data and I don't believe they're using it properly. I think it's going to be a disaster just waiting to happen. We're trying to show people with regenerative education centers and the Seed Trees program, we need to plant mitigation plants down there, vetiver grass. We need to put socks that catch the erosion. There's a catastrophe that's waiting to happen to our reefs with the first rain. And we don't have enough knowledgeable people on the ground here with the county or state. They don't have enough communication amongst themselves. They're letting the construction companies who have no knowledge at all take point. And that's already showed us how much that's failed. And so there needs to be something needs to happen, and some environmentalists really need to step up and show up in Lahaina and let people know that we need to start implementing right away before these first rains come, some mitigation from some of these toxins on the land and stop them from getting onto our reef systems, because it's about ready to happen. And I don't sleep about it. Every night I think about it. And I look at that and I go, wow, people are not, they're getting into their land and they're sifting through the ash. We don't know the extent of toxins, but we do know there's plants out there that will pull up heavy metals, will pull up all of this. And if we start right away trying to get some control measures in place, then I think all of the lands are cleanable. Nothing's going to seep in too far to it. There wasn't rain when it happened. It was a burn. Heat rises. It burned it over 1800 degrees. A lot of stuff carbonized. So mostly lead, a few metals, not even tons of mercury, asbestos. Most of that, to my first studies, is completely removable. Yes, we need some mitigation right now if it rains to keep things out of the ocean. But the answer to that, again, a long-winded answer, is yes, I believe these properties can be completely brought to safe, usable land within just a few months with the right practices put in place. The county doesn't want to open it up for independent scientists to come in either, because I don't know why. I don't know what's going on politically, but it's important to keep all that in mind. Because yes, in 3 months, and so we have excavators and we have machines on the ready, and we're giving away vetiver grass to our community, and we have piles with mycelium ready to go. So we're trying to play a part and offer free for our community to be able to give away and offer some of these measures. But it's not as easy as it seems to get involved within the political scene of it to make it happen.
I saw your Instagram video on vetiver grass. Can you explain for the listeners how that works and what it does?
Yeah, vetiver grass is a non-invasive species of grass that doesn't have seed. And it has a root system that's practically 20 feet deep and about 3 feet in diameter. And if you look on that Instagram, you can see how it's like fuzz and almost like it's very strong. It holds things in place. It's known for we were doing a project there in California in the Cardiff area where we were planting it on the sea cliffs, and it was just stopping the erosion dead in its place, holding those cliffs together. You can see the roots going down 20 foot, no more erosion. So they're being used in seawalls and different things. I actually own a vetiver company where I've been teaching people about it for 30 years and trying to use it. It sucks up nitrogen, nitrates out of the ground, heavy metals, as it's used all over the world in the perfume industry. It has a dark side. If you're making perfume with it, you're pulling these 20-foot roots out of the ground. So you're tilling deep and you're destroying it. The beautiful side of vetiver is to keep the roots in the ground, use it for erosion control, and cut the green because it mines minerals from deep and build topsoil with it. So that's how we use it. But we also use it in aquaponic systems and in swimming pools for actual biological filtration. That's where we got a lot of attention years ago. I make biological swimming pools where you can swim with the fish in the pool. And we use aquaponics basically and vetiver grass to filter the entire pool instead of chlorine. And that way the bees can drink out of it, the birds can drink out of it. You don't have chlorine on your skin, but you still have a clean swimming area. So the vetiver grass is just this amazing plant. I can't stress it enough how many amazing uses there are for it, including making into glass for surfboards, just like the flax grass. So it's an amazing plant. You can find a lot of that on vetiver systems. I think there's all kinds of stuff online about what vetiver does. It grows from anywhere from Hawaii all the way up to, I think, a 3 in the temperate zone. So it handles a cold freeze because the roots are so deep in the ground and that's a constant. And yeah, just an amazing plant for many different things.
One of the things, I think you might have kind of brushed through or brought it up slightly, but it extracts the minerals from the soil. So if there are toxins in the soil, it extracts them up. And then once you trim the grass, you can essentially throw it away and disperse of the minerals that way.
Yes, correct. And so there's some other issues that are happening going on Maui right now where all of the ash that's here from these some of these materials are supposed to be distributed within like a nuclear waste facility,
Oh,
something of
wow.
that level. And right now, the county doesn't want to spend billions of dollars on it. So they're using the excuse of EV. EV is bones for the Hawaiian term. It's not really sensible because almost all of the remains that were found in a car or in a home. And there's less than 100 of those sites out of 2,000. So
Mm.
nothing justifies keeping the bulk of this and putting it in a local landfill right next to our only running stream. So there's some giant environmental concerns that you guys are about ready to see surface. And people are trying to save money on every corner and using excuses like that's our folks' bones. Well, then identify the sites that had bones with them and put those somewhere local. But don't use it to keep all these toxin that federal law mandates. It didn't come from our islands, it came from somewhere else. So go put it in a facility that can handle it and don't chance contaminating us with it. I think you're going to see all these major important conversations that are about ready to start coming to the table as we see how this catastrophe is dealt with.
Wow. Um, Feels somewhat superficial compared to everything that we've been talking about now. But Adam also mentioned that you were maybe building shaping bays for some of the local shapers who lost their factories in Lahaina.
Yeah, for sure. You guys know who Oli is,
Yeah, of course.
uh, and Mark Anderson,
Yep.
another local shaper over here, Dwayne Ignacio. There's a few other folks in the mix. I'm not sure everybody in there. But we were going to take some 40-foot containers and shape them out as a room. But another company stepped up that is actually going to manufacture those in Florida, and they're designing them right now and going to send them out to us. And so we'll
Perfect.
have the custom shaping rooms made that are completely contained, that can catch all the dust, make sure that there's no waste for the environment. And then we're basically going to give those to those guys, and we will host those on one of our pieces of land until they can find their own place to put it, perhaps where their shop was at before, and get some of these guys up and shaping, because that's like a huge part of our culture here is the surf, that we live, sleep, eat it, so
Yeah. And their
that's
livelihoods too.
it's nice to be able to do that for a few of the folks around here, and to see that within our surf community. Yeah, we're excited about that, and it's
Awesome.
small as it is, it's also really big for us too.
Good. Yeah. Awesome. Obviously, we've heard rumors about potential threats from developers attempting to purchase land from displaced families. What's the reality of that situation on the ground?
I think it's actually that should probably be restated, as developers have already taken most of the land from people here. Only 250 of the homes were actually owned by local people. The rest of them were off island owners. So there's something to be said that that's already happened. Now we're having this battle over the water and what is going to be developed around us. And there's a huge need for housing for our local people. But as soon as the land becomes available and it's developed, it's not our local people that get it, because all the people who want to move here dictate the price of it. So land went from $200,000 in a course of 15 years to $1 million. The average house went from 400,000 to 1.2 million now, just like it did in California.
Yeah.
So we can't compete with that. All we are is displaced. So now there's this huge battle for affordable housing going on. And who's jumping on it to make money out of it? The developers that wanted to take all the land around here and develop it. And all their developments have shown us already that everything they bought to develop and supposedly put in affordable homes is all now giant gentlemen's estates with a few lemon trees in their yards. So there's a lot of hypocrisies going on around us, and we're not sure what the future brings. And I think there are guaranteed people that want to grab land amidst this catastrophe. So we're not really sure what's going to happen over it. I would say,
I
please.
know. Yeah. I mean, I know you're not sure, but what do you envision it looks like in 10 years?
I would hope that the community is listened to, and that perhaps there's a change in the way we do things, and that maybe more agriculture will step forward. Maybe instead of putting all these shops and making all these hotels 90% of our economy revolving around tourism, I think tourism should be 10% of our economy. I think that people should come here and experience aloha instead of us being bummed out at you because we can't get a parking spot or we can't get cream in the store. I go to the to get lunch, and tourist family every day will pull up and send the kids out to get in front of line, which is just 50 other tourists, and I go back to work with no lunch. And that people don't realize that. They just think, oh, so why? We're entitled to go there and we're serving you. But all that money doesn't come to us. It goes to the hotels. It goes to all the outside corporations who've already taken everything from us. So I think people don't know that. And like, even in the surf community, sometimes in Hawaii, they're like, oh, I wasn't treated very good there. If they actually understood why, what's happened to us over here and how inundated we've been by the world, that might be a little more obvious. So I'd like to say that Lahaina is going to turn back into an ulu forest and it's going to be walkable, and that tourists are going to be a small amount of that town and not be the overwhelming thing that Lahaina is, which we've had to grow up with. When I was a kid, it was like shell shops and local people and bars and little restaurants and mom and pop stores. There's not one down there now. All got taken over by giant corporations. So I'd like to see it turn into something in the past, but what does the current situation around us tell us? I don't know. I don't know what I expect to see there in 10 years. And it's scary.
Well, based on the work that you're doing currently, and has the community response and the local government decision makers response made you feel optimistic that they're kind of seeing the error of their ways with the tourist economy being so heavily focused that way?
I would say that the community has what's taking care of Maui. You asked me earlier about government stepping up, and not the community is what's taking care of each other over here. A bunch of different hubs, community supporting each other. But community really has had a strong voice of like, yeah, less tourism. Yeah, let's get more trees. Let's get more water back in our streams. Let's try to pay attention to what a community of us first looks like and tourists second. Right now, it's tourists first and everybody local in the background and serving them. So what does a Lahaina looks like? It was the state capital here. The Kingdom of Hawaii was here. It was these giant fish ponds they filled in. Nothing has been more desecrated or disrespected when it comes to monuments or respecting the culture. People think Hawaii is come have Mai Tais and go parasailing. Come to Hawaii is supposed to understand the culture of these people who've been here for thousands of years in the middle of the ocean, who created surfing and given that to the world. You'd think there'd be some reverence to come here with, but it's not that way. We get the worst of the worst coming around going, get out of the way. We're here for you and we support you. And that's been really hard to deal with. Again, I'm going off on a rant, and I'm not negative on visitors. I think when visitors come to experience the culture and visitors come to see the beauty of here, and they realize that, wow, another hotel hasn't helped Maui. You know what I mean? It's hurt it. And if there was 10 hotels here and not 100 hotels here, it would be a much different experience. So I think trying to bring in some sense of tourism fall into the background and more local economy being created. And I think to create that economy out of like farming and things that bring us closer to the land, and that would also give us food security at the same time, that'd be like the most amazing thing ever. I don't know if it's going to happen, but that'd be amazing.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction with what you're doing. And even if people don't embrace it,
So people are embracing that. That is the word that's being said. I know I gave a long-winded answer again, but as far as we're on the county website now, we're seeing that the federal government has just handed the power to the county to make these decisions.
Gotcha.
The county has a local advisory board. So it gives me a little bit of hope that they're like, oh yeah, we don't have any resources. If someone's offering 300 containers to put people in, we better jump on. We're letting these tents in the middle of this field over here happen. So I do feel good a little bit that there is going to be some movement. And I think the pressure from the community is so strong that there has to be some movement. And it's for the first time ever really putting some pressure on the government, county, state, and federal. So I do have a little bit of hope that there could be some change spurred out of this.
Yeah, and I think even just on an individual level, like you were talking about at the beginning, the definition of wealth, it's like it's so easy to rely on convenience. But if this has been a reset and people do, um, you know, prepare their own food or farm their own food, catch their own food, and that food not only tastes better, but it's more nutrient rich, you feel better because of it. It could, on an individual level, be kind of a light bulb moment that has a larger effect within the community.
I see that constantly, and that's why I do what I do. When you come to my farm and you feel it's 20 degrees cooler when you go in the trees, and you go, oh, people get goosebumps all the time. People come and see, wow, right here is desert, hardest rock with plastic you ever saw. And just a few feet away is lush, rich, black soil that was made from one thing: consistency, dedication, observation, patience, and consistency. But it's all one thing: stewardship. And that's all it takes. And I think that when we see farms that look like oases, beautiful old Hawaii, we're like, wow, that's what I came to see. Not 1,000 rows of lemon trees or corn or sorghum. You know what I mean? I didn't come here for that. It
Yeah.
doesn't serve us in any way, shape, or form. And yes, I see it all the time. I bring people into my farm, and that's why I have such a big following like I do, is those moments. Like, oh my God, wow, I could do this, and it doesn't take tons of water. It just takes me and my hands. It doesn't take rocket science. It takes dedication. I think that's why I'm motivated to do what I do, and why I go through what I'm doing. And you're right. You said a reset. Right now is a pivotal moment for resetting what's happening. So I would hope that the powers that be, if they are also made of our community, can hear us and can perhaps see what the future moving forward looks like with that. It would be just absolutely amazing. And I think to be able to play a small part in the reset with inspiration and solutions that we're actually putting in people's hands, and that we know all these peoples are going to be champions of these solutions and this sustainability. And most of them are very important players in our community, our kapuna, you know what I mean? And families and Hawaiians we've known for so long. And so that's why I'm a good choice to be able to put it in people's hands. If you look in the background, you see Yayoi in the background. She's from Jodo Mission, the Buddhist temple that's been here for 130 years. Her father's the pastor there. She grew up right there in the middle of Lahaina. You'll see the people around us in our office and are doing here. We're all part of this. We know people in that town and we know where it's going. And that's really important. You know, we know every little crook and crack of Lahaina town. And so to be able to play a part in it, no matter how small it is, again, we feel honored to be able to do it. So you can bet one thing, that we're going to do it right. We're going to make sure it goes where it needs to go. And that I can say to everybody to make sure. I don't know who's listening, but yeah, just to let people know that.
Well, your solutions make perfect sense. I just don't know a lot of other people who had your unique knowledge set to kind of figure out these simple solutions. And number two, I don't know anybody who has your level of drive, determination to see them through, and work ethic to see it all through. So it's impressive, and you're doing incredible work.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. We don't know
Yeah.
who sees it and where it's at. We just do what we do here on the ground. And the rewards are amazing when you're on the ground. If you're ever here, you're invited anytime. And anybody who's out here and they hear this and they are here, stop by. If you're here before January and you're headed towards Lahaina, maybe make us the end of your road before you go to Lahaina, just out of respect.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I can say. I'm stoked that that people are. We're about ready to fall out of the limelight. Not limelight. I don't know if that's the right word, but it is such a long road ahead of us. And I want to say most of the money that folks donated, a lot of it went to tampons and meals and stuff and Red Cross and all these places that it left already. And so we really got to be creative with how we move into the future. And we really want to do our homework, and we can use the world's help. Everyone who's gotten married here, everyone who's went parasailing here, watched our sunsets, we have the chance for a reset. Help us reset. How do you help us reset? How you come here, what you put forward towards it. It's a plea for help because we're going to need it, but also a plea for like a mindset of when you come here. And I think if you come here with that mentality, you're going to feel better about it as well.
Yeah. Well, your passion is contagious, so I think that's a great marketing tool too.
Oh, great. You know.
I'll obviously direct people to your website and all that stuff in post-production, but is there anywhere specific that you want to make sure that people get to if they do want to support, whether it's financially or by maybe they are construction inclined and they can come spend time with you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to get a hold of us is just go to our website for regenerative education centers, and that is recenters.org. There is a volunteer button there. You can usually fill out the volunteer form, or you can go right to the contact info and just give a little brief thing. Hey, we're a team of construction guys, or we're a couple and we want to be there for 2 weeks and we're dedicated to help build. We've had a few amazing people that way. So we're not saying no to that. We've had the tourists try to recommend people lately. We realize that's kind of a hypocrisy. We don't want weekend warriors that are parasailing the rest of the time. If you've come here to serve, then give that to Maui. Experience some aloha, port it, and then then come back a year later when you can see the change that it's brought. Something to say with that. So I say that sensitively, but yeah, you can go to our website. You can find what we're doing on the Instagram at Living Earth Systems, and then what I teach people you can find through livingearthsystems.com. You can find the Living Earth Systems on YouTube, and you can just sort of keep track with what we're doing and our little my little facet that I can try and lend to the world and perhaps help them have a little bit better relationship with nature based on my own experience with it.
Yeah, that's what I found too. Just tracking some of that stuff is even if I'm not going to be spending time in Maui anytime soon, the information you're providing is applicable for where I live too. I could use it, Yeah.
That's why we do like online classes, and we're about ready to upgrade a lot of that because we realized what a demand there was. And like regenerative educations, our community centers serve people on the ground. What we put forward through the films, and once we've got the map, we can send it everywhere, and people start doing that themselves. I think we need ecology centers all over the world, not necessarily just Living Earth System or regenerative education, but I think people need to step up and say, look, we have this ability to bring change. How are we going to step that forward? There's the ecology center in Southern California there somewhere.
Yeah.
Evan Strong, I think, and those guys are doing something good there. They're really trying to push in their community regenerative strategies with that little farm and whatnot there. So I think it's important. We need the rising tide floats all the boats. And right now people need to sort of wake up, and all together, if we can like seek solutions together, I think is really amazing. So reach out and say hi and get involved.
Just final note. At the beginning, you said there was 100,000. You just, as an example, said there was 100,000 coffee cups used in Maui every day. Is that a real number?
It's actually higher than that. I think when we did the data, it was almost 300,000
a day.
A day. In California alone, it was, God, I don't want to make a misquote on the show, so let's take that into consideration. But you can find it. And it was well over 1 million disposable coffee cups a day. And
it's insane.
Know to bring their own cup. Like some people are drinking 4 or 5 cups of coffee in a day, and in the offices, and bringing them for friends. And so that's one small change that can make a major difference. Also, the plastic in the oceans, I cannot tell you how much plastic this disaster put on Maui. There was millions of dollars spent on little water bottles this big. They're everywhere now. And if anybody in the larger picture had common sense, they would have brought over 3-gallon jugs of water and dispersed them that way, and then people would have been able to use them to refill it. So there's these giant disconnects. When folks want to help, if you're going to give to a nonprofit, make sure they got their act together. Make sure they've done their homework and are going to do it right. That's our responsibility as a nonprofit, is to make sure that we're efficient and that we're taking into consideration all of these other aspects that are going to affect us down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're on an island, you see it so much more clearly, because it's unavoidable.
Yeah, there's no away.
Yeah, exactly. Well, 5 or 6 years ago, I interviewed Jeff Timponi, and he said when he moved there in the early 80s, the landfill was a giant hole in the ground, and now it's a mountain.
Yeah. Jeff Timponi, I love him. He's a good friend. He does the Leaf Light program there, and that's
Yeah.
EPS boards. And we did a lot with my Worms That Eat Styrofoam. We also made a film together years ago called Farm to Foam about making boards out of agave, and some really cool things. Yeah, he's a pioneer in so many ways. Great guy. And yeah, he's doing a lot with his Leaf Light program to bring that awareness to our industry. Hey, we're going to be surfers. Let's start thinking that way too. What can we do to clean up our act?
Yeah. I've got a couple of those leaf light boards, and they're epic.
Epic, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Amazing. Love Jeff.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, Eddy, for taking the time. I can't imagine that you get much rest or time off, so I appreciate you spending an hour to do this.
Yeah, I haven't, and I'm stoked. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm glad to just explain to people what's going on. Yeah, we appreciate everyone's support. We've really seen people step up, and it's amazing. And we also want to let people know it's a long haul. So, if you're going to just keep it in mind and keep what's going on here on your mind, so that in the next few years you can come back to a beautiful Lahaina.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, chat soon.